This is your before and after story. Prepare for an incredible career in nursing. At Southeastern College, experience expert hands-on training. Learn real-world skills in our professional lab and simulated settings. And train for opportunities as a practical nurse, registered nurse, or career advancement with our RN to BSN program. At Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
Did you know there's actually over 40 million donkeys in the world? That's right, over 40 million. Now, in today's episode, Kathy Dean, the founder of Longhopes Donkey Shelter, she joins me. Her journey to becoming the first accredited donkey shelter in the U.S. is one of perseverance, total commitment, and love for these intelligent and loyal animals. Now, how does a judge become the founder of a donkey shelter? Well, first off, you got to start by trying to get a couple donkeys for your farm. And then the next thing you know, you've got a donkey shelter. Now, not just any donkey shelter, but an accredited one. Now, here's some donkey tidbits. A male donkey is called a jack, or, wait for it, a jackass. Yep, that's where that name comes from. Now, a female donkey is called a jenny, and also sometimes called, I love this one, a she-ass. Now, that's true. Anyways, you probably know a mule is a horse and a donkey combined. But did you know that it has to be a female horse with a donkey? Now, in a rare form, a male horse and a female donkey is called a henny. Now, I kind of like that name, henny. I just like it. I don't know why. Now, donkeys have this incredible long history that goes way, way back, literally 5,000 to 7,000 years. Beast of burden? Yep, a donkey. The term donkey, it was really not used until the late 1700s. Now, we get into all sorts of donkey trivia, but you need to hear Kathy's visions for Longhopes. It's pretty incredible. They save donkeys from slaughter auctions. Yep, you heard me right, slaughter auctions. And it never ceases to amaze me that we actually still have these for all equines. Now, just think of these kind, loving, intelligent animals that can actually be slaughtered. For me, it's just unthinkable. Not only does Longhopes and Kathy save these animals, she finds homes for them. But wait, they go one step further. When they get older, she'll take them in and has this basically like this geriatric group, kind of like an old folks' home for donkeys. Now, remember that fun show that used to be on TV called Hee Haw? This episode is full of inspiration and fun facts of these hee-hawing, really cool, and I mean really cool animals. So sit back and enjoy today's ride.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange. Losses and games from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Mark Kyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the For Real podcast. Today, my guest is Kathy Dean, and you know what? She's got a story to tell. She's from Longhopes Donkey Shelter, up in Bennett, Colorado, just east of Denver. And wait till you hear her story. It's going to be a really fun one today. Kathy, thanks so much for joining. I can't wait to get into this.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Mark.
Well, I know you're busy, and, we were really busy, I know. And, when we're going to get into some of the reasons why you're really busy, aside from just the obvious reasons. But I really want to dig into a little bit about you first and how you got doing what you're doing, because you've been doing it now since 1999, if I read correctly.
Yes.
How about that? I did some homework, one of those rare moments. So let's talk about you. So are you originally from Colorado?
No, I'm from Wisconsin, and everybody thinks if you're from Wisconsin, you grew up on a dairy farm. And I grew up in this city. I didn't know anything about livestock, animals, equines, but it was a fast learning curve when I got to Colorado.
I guess when we talked before, we didn't talk about it. Do you remember the Governor Tommy Thompson?
Yes.
I know Tommy. Well, I did. I knew Tommy pretty well. I took him fly fishing, almost drowned him one time. It's a funny story. I'll tell it offline, but it's a funny story. Really nice guy, by the way.
Yeah. I met Tommy Thompson. When I was a young person, I worked at the state capitol in Wisconsin as a page, one of my
Oh,
jobs.
really?
Yeah,
So did you go to school in Wisconsin as well
I
then?
did. I went to undergraduate and I went to law school there.
Yeah, so here's a question I want to ask you. So, when I was on your site and looking at that thing, I know that you're an attorney and a judge, but what's an administrative law judge? I'm for the lack of me, I don't know. By the way, I was pre-law as an example. By the way, as a little tidbit.
That's a judge that does not handle criminal or district court cases, but only handles cases that involve administrative laws. And I was handling cases through the Department of Labor and Employment.
Okay, so explain that a little bit more detail for me because I understand administrative, but I'm not quite sure what that means.
So people have, for instance, unemployment claims and they have workers' compensation claims.
Okay.
They file their claim, they go through the process, they may have a hearing, they may win, they may lose, the insurance company may win, or the injured person may win. Either party has a right to appeal that decision. I sat on an appellate board that decided those appeals.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes more sense. I was going, literally, I did. So my goal was to actually go to law school and go on there, but my path changed different directions so many times. But so were you practicing law and sitting on the bench up in Wisconsin, or then how did you get to Colorado?
Oh, no, I moved to Colorado after graduating from law school. I went to school in Madison. It's a wonderful, wonderful
I
city.
love Madison.
Yes, but I had this kind of feeling that if I started practicing law there, I'd never leave because it was such a wonderful town. So I took a big leap and came out to Colorado because I had a brother living out here,
Okay.
and that's how I got settled in. And I did several things. I worked for a county attorney's office. I was in private practice with a firm. I was in private practice by myself. I worked for a large corporation, did corporate law. I taught business law for a while, and then I took the position on this appellate board.
And then you ended up having to deal with a different kind of ass at the end of the day. Sorry.
The thing about law, which is such a good training for doing animal rescue, is because frequently in the law, clients will come to you in difficult times in their life where they're in a huge personal crisis and they're turning to you to fix it. And the same thing happens in the animal rescue
Sure.
world is people are coming to you at a very difficult time in their life, and you can't fix all of those things that they're going through, but you can take care of one piece, and that is taking care of their animal so that their animal doesn't bear the brunt of these life decisions that are happening by their humans.
Well, it's funny because you're somewhat in an unstructured world, but I have a feeling you approach it with structure, which is most, children and I'm assuming rescue animals need structure. So you're probably really suited for it, I would bet.
I think one of the hardest things about doing animal rescue is people have the great passion. Thank goodness they do have passion for
Right.
animals, and it is wonderful. But the bottom line is it's a business, and
Sure.
I say that with the most respect. It has to be looked at as a business because there has to be a framework in which you don't do more than you're capable of doing. You don't do more than you're capable of paying for, and sometimes that means having to say no. You cannot be everything to everyone and still have a healthy, functioning business.
Well, and the other thing too, when I look at your path, and I want to get more into that, is you weren't planning to be a donkey rescue. So there, so you had to take a healthy path really fast.
Absolutely was not. This was never any dream of mine. It was never in the works. But it all happened very naturally. I started to look at it, and I'll tell you quickly. I met three women, and each of these women, this is true, each had a unique skill to offer. One knew how to do websites. One knew how to do training, and one had some community networking ability. And then I brought in the business legal background, and the four of us got together and we created this.
Well, First of all, I told you this when we talked prior to recording today, but I love the name. First of all, I just think it's the greatest name ever. I really do. It stands out to me. It's got so many different subtle meanings to it too, which is really cool. You got their long ears, but you also have those long hopes you want to try to give them. So it's kind of cool.
It just, I don't know how it just came. It came very easily. It just seemed to fit.
Well, the name came easy, but let's get into it because you're gonna adopt a couple donkeys. Is that what you're gonna do?
Wow. So this is how brilliant I am. I had a small piece of property and I was mowing it on my riding lawnmower once a month. And I felt like it was such a great burden that I wanted my Sunday afternoon once a month back. And I thought, oh, geez, if you just get a couple of animals to graze this down, I wouldn't have to spend all those hours doing that. So I went out looking for animals and I was going to get llamas because they were a fad at the time.
I think you get goats to get rid of grass.
And so I was certain I was going to get llamas. The decision was made. And I went out and met a couple of llamas. Again, the decision was already made. And in my presence, they were not very friendly at all. And I decided, no, I don't think I'm going to do this. So I kept looking around and I'd had a little horse riding experience, but I just didn't think that was for me. And I kept looking and I did a little research and I came across donkeys. What's it, donkey? And I like the fact that they were smaller than horses. They generally move a little slower. They don't tend to run you over. And then the thing that really sold me was my research that they were very hardy. So you didn't have to be a great expert in animal care to keep them alive because they were so hardy. And I thought, I think that's the animal for me.
What'd your husband think?
My husband, to his detriment, is very, very supportive. And I think he must live by the philosophy that if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
Right.
But he couldn't have asked for a better partner. He supported me in everything and was always there by my side. And he's this jack of all trades. And so I was able to, over the 25 years, go to him and say, could you build me something that kind of goes around circle and then it comes out and then it goes over to the left and then it's kind of this big. And he'd go, yeah, sure.
He knows you. So let me ask you a quick question. And I want you to stay in your train of thought. Are you stubborn like them? Are you stubborn in personality wise, like a donkey?
I don't think so. What I'm
Perseverance.
What I'm not is I'm impatient.
Yeah.
That is a really bad quality. If you're training donkeys, you cannot be impatient because it's never going to be your timetable. It's going to be theirs. And that really has helped me. That has really helped me change my agenda and not have these tight expectations of what I must accomplish in every connection I have with a donkey, and accept that, no, they're going to some extent, it's going to be their timetable, what they can accomplish in a day or want to give.
Well, I find it, I mean, if we all look back on everything, we all, you don't, you get a donkey because you like a donkey, but you don't know they're also going to teach you something too. And anytime you do get involved with anything, whether it's a donkey or a dog, a cat, or even kids, you learn a lot more from them than they probably learn from us, I'll bet you, in the long run.
I think one of the things that has kept me doing it all these years, and I know people get uncomfortable when you apply, human qualities to animals, but sometimes there's no other way of describing it. So I have to use human words. But the incredible ability that donkeys have to somehow shed the neglect and abuse and mistreatment they've had in the past and give humans another chance to get it right. And that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not an easy thing for me to do personally. I know that for a fact.
Very hard for humans. And if donkeys had been the kind of animal where, once they hold a grudge, once they've been abused, once they're frightened, once they're timid, you can't turn it around.
Right.
This would be a completely different story. But what I found was that no matter what situation I took them out of, if if I just put them in an environment where they had their basic needs and they had some kindness and they had the safety, both physical, and mental safety, all of that old stuff was capable of fading away, and you could build something new on top of it that was good and positive and trusting, because they're animals that live in the moment, and that's a really good quality.
Yeah, I wish we all could do that ourselves. That's that makes if you could see me, I have a smile on my face. I love that. That's a great study.
That was always, and the number of stories are just immeasurable of animals who I got out of a kill pen or a horribly neglected case, and I would get them back to the shelter, and I'm, oh my gosh, this poor animal, it looks so bad, and they just start melting. They're there. I say 50% of all the work I ever did was done by the other animals in the shelter, because
Right.
the new guy arrives and he gets in the paddock with 8, 10 other donkeys, and they come over and they start telling this donkey, what are you being so nervous about?
This is cool here.
There's food here, there's water here, they give you treats, they put blankets on you, they groom you. I mean, look at us. We're all chilled. You think we're nervous and afraid here? Come on, and they just start mellowing out. It's very fun to watch.
Well, that's awesome. But let's get back to your first two donkeys. Let's get there and get up to that. I really want to get into all their personality and everything, but I want to get to your story so everybody understands what you're doing, and then we'll.
So I decided I was going to get a couple donkeys. So I went out and started looking for them. And I called here, I called there, I called horse rescues. Nobody had it. Now, remember, this is 26 years ago.
Before social media was so big, yeah.
And I couldn't find any. And then I would call, you have those little shopper magazines where they'll say, 2 cats free to a good home, come pick them up and stuff. And I'd call those places, and I could never make a connection. I was like, why is this happening? I know there are homeless donkeys. Why can't I find a couple? Well, it was because the U.S. slaughterhouses were still open. And so if a donkey didn't find a new home after it was displaced fairly quickly, it was just easier for people to take that donkey to the slaughterhouse and have it processed for meat.
This is crazy. Now, and let's talk a little bit about slaughter. I want to stay in your story because the slaughterhouse may be gone here, but they're in Canada and Mexico because there's still slaughter
Yes.
auctions that people do that. Can you talk a little bit about that so people understand that?
So we did close the U.S. slaughterhouses here for equine processing, but it didn't have anything to do with any kind of humanity issue. It was basically a decision not to fund the USDA to check equine meat after it was processed. And so when that happened, we thought that was going to be a gain for the welfare of equines, but the market in Canada and Mexico was always there, but the giant markets from Illinois just moved to Canada. And sadly, the number of equines being processed has not really changed. And the other sad thing about it is that now, instead of these equines being in a crowded trailer without food and water for 4 to 6 hours, now they're in these trailers for 12 to 24 hours. So it's actually much more abusive. And in the United States, at least we had the USDA inspection of the process, and of course, there's no oversight at all in Canada or Mexico. So we are still in a bad situation.
It's horrible. I mean, and most people don't know, but even like the wild horses in up west of you, or there are probably some in Colorado too, but they do a roundup every year. Because I don't want to get into that one because it gets into politics and all that, but it's just a terrible thing. So anyway, so you're looking for two donkeys, can't find them. How do you find them?
So I ended up getting a gentleman who was in the business, talked me into buying a couple of donkey foals from him. because I was going to go get feral donkeys from the BLM.
Right.
And this gentleman said, no, you don't want to do that. No. It's like having wild deer in your backyard. You aren't going to like that. You're not prepared for that. So what you want is you want a couple of baby donkeys from me that you can raise on your own, and you can make them whatever you want. And I said, okay, I guess you know better than I do. So I guess I thought I was buying a couple of baby donkeys who'd been hand raised, maybe touched, maybe handled a little bit, maybe had seen a human. No, what I bought were 2 donkeys who had been born out on 200 acres and never saw a human until the day the owner came out, roped them around the neck, put them in an open trailer, and drove them to me.
Yeah. You mean the non-feral donkeys, right?
Right, the non-feral.
Yeah.
Man. So I had these 2 babies. One of them was 3 months old, which I didn't know then. I now, of course, know is too young to be adopted. And a 4-month-old. The 4-month-old was without his mother. The 3-month-old, I had to borrow the mother because she was still nursing. The mother was a gorgeous-looking 5-year-old Jenny who herself was untrained and unhandled. So now I have 3 donkeys at my house. I have no prior training. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never trained a donkey, and I can't get within 20 feet of any of them.
Sounds like me.
So I said, what have I done? What have I done and what I'm going to do? So this 26 years ago, there wasn't any YouTube. There wasn't any Facebook. There was nothing. There were very few people around who had any interest or skills. I was on my own. There were a couple of books, but the books weren't very helpful. And
I mean, back in the day when you had to go to the library.
yeah. So reading it in a paragraph is not really very helpful.
Yeah.
So I started by taking a lawn chair and my People magazine, and I sat in the chair 20 feet away from them while they ate. The second day I sat 10 feet away. The third day I sat 5 feet away. And the fourth day, as I was reaching over the feeder, I started touching them.
Oh, that's cool.
And I built on that. And as I built on it, I just fell in love. They are smart. They're receptive. They're funny. It was just everything. And so I kept building and working with them and taking them for walks and training. And I said, these are really great animals. I really like them. And then the market was so narrow, Mark, that somehow the word got out that I'd become some kind of donkey trainer.
The happy dummy that didn't know what they were doing.
I mean, that's how little. So then people started calling me, could you work with my donkeys and everything? Could you clean up these donkeys I'm getting? They're not physically in good shape and they're training. So I went, and so my head, my silly head was getting big. And so I thought, oh, sure, I can do that.
I'm a donkey expert now.
Yeah, right.
Donkey whisperer. You're the donkey whisperer.
Yeah, really.
You and Robert Redford.
Yeah. And then I still liked it. And then my husband and I made some job changes and moved to my current location. And I didn't really have a complete plan. But as I said, what happened was just very, very fatefully, I met these 3 women, and when the 4 of us got together, I said, I think this is a board. And the month that I moved onto this property outside of Denver, there was a Yahoo group, when Yahoo was the number one thing.
Yeah.
And there were these people exchanging emails about this kill buyer who was collecting donkeys and horses. And when he got enough, he was going to send them on a truck to the slaughterhouse. And we had to get all these donkeys out. And so I said to my husband, well, we could take a couple, couldn't we? I mean, a couple, it's just a couple,
The old famous saying, we could just take a couple.
A couple, right. We have room for a couple. And so that happened. And then, there was a Yahoo group. A woman said, I have a 40-year-old donkey and I need to move. And I'm moving to the mountains, and I don't think it's a good idea to take this 40-year-old donkey up to the mountains. She was right.
Mm-hmm.
Would any of you take this donkey? And I was like, who would do that? This is a animal that's not going to live long. He's going to be heartbreaking. He's going to be very expensive. Who would do that? And I said to my husband, well, we could just take one donkey, couldn't we? It's just one donkey, and he's not going to live that long. So I took this donkey. His name was Rocky. He was all white. He probably was a different color, but as he got old, he lost all the pigmentation. He was the greatest donkey ever, Mark.
Oh.
He was the sweetest, kindest, gentlest, best behaved, but he was elderly. He was in the dying process.
What was his name?
Rocky.
Rocky. Okay,
Yeah,
Rocky.
Rocky. And he was the best teacher. He taught me everything I needed to learn about how to take care of a geriatric animal and how to see one of these animals through their last days.
Oh.
And he did. He lived 2 years. And one morning, I gave him his mush. He didn't have any teeth anymore. So one morning, it was a nice, sunny, it was a warm day. And he was in the paddock with the younger donkeys. And he had his breakfast. And he laid down later in the morning and passed away.
Oh.
So that was great. And then I got in, like I said, got involved with these people who were trying to get these 15 donkeys out. And I said to my husband, we could take a couple. So we went out to the site and there were 5 donkeys left. And all the good ones, there had been some beautiful donkeys there because I saw the pictures, young ones, jennies, spotted ones.
Oh, wait, okay, hold on, pause for a second. For everybody listening, let's tell everybody what a male donkey is, and I know what it is, but yeah, because I know what you're saying. So, why don't you tell everybody, female, male, and all that kind of stuff?
So the scientific name of the donkey is Equinus asinus, Assinns. The male donkey who is capable of reproducing is a jack. So they call him the jackass. That's where that came from. It was never originally a derogatory term. It was just a technical term.
Right.
The female donkey is called a jenny, jennet, or a jenny, Jennet. The babies are called foals, and they're either jack foals or jenny foals. Yeah. So the weird thing is, a male that's not capable of reproducing anymore because he's been neutered, they call a John.
The opposite of what it really is. That's funny.
But that, I don't know. I can't tell you where that came from, but that is what they call him. They call him John.
Oh yeah, because probably like a Dear John letter, they never give the real name.
Right. So we go out to this site, and like I said, all the good ones. There was 5 scrub donkeys. Oh my God, they looked terrible. They were all terrible. So I said, and this lady that I met came with us. We took 2 trailers, and I said, gee, I just don't know. My husband said I could get 2, and I just don't know who to take because I know what's going to happen to the other 3. That I don't take. And this woman said, what do you mean take 2? We got to load all 5 of them in the trailers and worry about what to do with them later. Which I learned meant that I would have to worry about what to do with them later.
Yeah, exactly.
So sure enough, I bought 5 donkeys out of the kill pen, got them home. And so now in an afternoon, I went from 3 donkeys to 8 donkeys. That was the moment in which I said,
uh-oh.
I need to establish a rescue, and I need to figure out, how do you rehabilitate them? How do you find good homes for them? How do you get them adopted? Because collecting donkeys is not, just collecting to hoard donkeys is not a solution for anybody.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at PrepVet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
Hey, so I got to ask you a question. So, and I want to stay in the train. When I was reading some of the stuff on donkeys, a group of donkeys is called a harem. Is that a real thing?
Okay, so the harems are only made up of female donkeys. Males do not stay. Males only come to the harem to do breeding, and then they leave.
Okay.
So the harems are all made up of mothers, sisters, daughters, grandmothers, aunts. The families stay together forever if possible.
So similar to what you find in the Middle East. Okay, yeah, okay.
The jack foals, when they start coming into their sexuality, and they can come in very early, from 3 to 6 months old.
Wow.
The harem instinctually drives them away to preserve the genetic balance, to avoid inbreeding.
Oh, really? That's cool.
They're forced to go out and find another harem where they could spread their genetic line.
I've never really heard that before in wildlife, so that's interesting. I wonder what other animals are like that, where they actually try to avoid inbreeding. That's really interesting.
Now, we do have a problem now, because as we narrow the rangeland of the feral donkeys, they have less and less opportunity to
Right.
move on. And so they've actually found that there is just a overwhelming inbreeding going on right now, because they have no other choice.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's sad too. Well, modern times, anytime there's a problem, usually has something to do with us humans.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So now you've got your 8, and now you're creating this organization, and let's keep going with your story.
So when I started this, the horse rescues, one of the reasons I did it was because the donkeys were very underserved. The horse rescues, we have a lot of them in Colorado. We love our horses here, but they didn't want to touch donkeys, and they didn't understand them. They didn't know them. Donkeys had just these negative stereotypes. They're stupid. They all kick. They all bite. You can't do anything with them. And it was just there. It was there. So of course the horse rescue didn't want to get involved. So when I started, you couldn't get a veterinarian out. You couldn't get a farrier, hoof trimmer out. They were all very afraid of donkeys. And that wasn't totally unfounded, because most of the donkeys that were out there were owned by people who didn't handle them. They were intact.
Mistreated them.
They were out there just guarding livestock, so they didn't have any manners. And understandably, professionals whose livelihood is dependent on their not breaking their hands or their wrists or their elbows or their knees did not want to be putting themselves in a position of wrestling with a donkey.
Okay, that's logical.
Yeah. So, but then, I started working with them, and I started getting some medical care and getting some skills on them. And I got some into some homes and got them adopted, and the word got out. And the farriers started meeting them, and the veterinarians around the state started meeting them. And they went, oh, well, they're actually very nice and docile. And I can examine them, and I can, give them a shot if they need to, and I can trim their hooves without worrying about getting kicked in the head. I didn't know that anything. And so it just expanded and expanded, and more people wanted them, and I was able to expand their attraction to being pets and companion animals, not just livestock guards.
Right.
And now all of the horse rescues all have a few donkeys.
They do, because, well, a lot of them get them. Well, I know, like I had an episode I mentioned her earlier when we were talking that one day, but Moon Mountain, she gets mainly equines, but she also gets donkeys. And by the way, for you guys that are listening, and you go into a little bit more detail on this, Kathy, a donkey is also, a burro is the same thing as a donkey, pretty much, I guess, right?
Burro is just the Spanish word for donkey, but generally what they use, they say burro when they're referring to the smaller, slighter built model that comes out of our southwestern, feral population.
Right.
And they basically call them donkeys if they're east of the Mississippi. The animals, the larger framed animals that were part of the breeding that was started with President Washington. He got a jack, and he was starting to make mules and stuff. So that's the only difference. They're the exact same animal.
Well, when I was doing some of the research, there was I forget where it was now, but there was at one point they found it and they did the DNA. Some of the original donkeys were bred that were bigger than horses. They were bigger as 15 hands, which is I think 61 inches or something like that. Yeah, there was actually some donkeys at one point that were bigger than horses.
Something that's really interesting, it always fascinated me, that if you believe in the theory of evolution, originally the zebra, horse, and donkey were all the same animal. And then the horse and the donkey diverged and went one way and got domesticated, and the zebra went the other way and remained a wild animal. But physically and metabolically, the donkey and the zebra are much more alike than the donkey and the horse. So why would that happen?
I was saving this, but I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to tell you something I'll bet you don't know. Okay, first off, for those who are listening, the donkey actually originated in Africa and then made its way over here.
Yes.
So I've spent a lot of time doing volunteer work with refugees all over the world. I spent a lot of time in Africa. So I know a little bit of Swahili. So the word punda malaya is the word for zebra in Swahili. But what the literal translation, if you're there, is donkey with stripes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
So Punda Malay, I've got a new word for you. I was betting you didn't know it, but I was going to save it towards the end.
That's cool. I like that.
Another smile on my face. Yeah. So when they literally the way I interpret it, because when you're over there, they're all over the place, right? There's wild animals even by Nairobi. You can see them. So I take it kind of like here in Texas, we got all this wild deer. They're saying, "Oh, it's like a donkey with stripes." They're all over the place. And we're going, "Oh my God, there's a zebra." But anyway, Punda Malaya. That's my little tidbit for you today.
So yes, they originated in northern Africa, and the donkeys in the United States are basically called wild American asses. It's a stupid name for a breed, but they call them that because they are a combination descendant of two breeds of African donkeys, the Somali and the Nubian.
Right.
And the Denver Zoo just had an advertisement. They just had a baby Somali born. The Somali has stripes on its legs. The Nubian is the one that produces the cross down the shoulder.
Right. I read about
that. But the Nubian is extinct, which is just amazing because you find that cross on every donkey unless they're pure white.
Yeah, and the pure white ones were the original ones were, again, this is you're going to know way more than me, but was in Syria, Damascus. They raised white donkeys in Damascus in Syria and like for people to have there.
Oh.
I read some. No, I've done a lot of stuff in Syria, so it just stood out to me. That's the only reason I remember it, but yeah, it's kind of cool.
I have white donkeys at our shelter, but I'm, near the Mile High City, and being a white donkey is not a good thing here. They're not albinos, but they lack a lot of pigmentation.
Yeah, so they get sunburn.
Yes, they get skin cancer. They get squamous cell carcinoma. It's very sad. Yeah.
That's crazy. But let's go back. I'm going to stay on track because one thing I read, and I know we're bouncing, but you were the very first accredited donkey shelter in the United States.
From the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. Now there were other accreditation organizations before the federation occurred.
Uh-huh.
There was the American Association of Sanctuaries, and we were accredited by that organization too. And then there was TAOS, TAOS, but they were kind of short-lived, and then the Global Federation came in.
Well, the point I'm making up is here you are, is that you're going to get a couple donkeys to eat your grass. And now you're the first accredited for them and all the other ones too. Never a big plan. Here's your new plan. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty amazing.
Well, it was just they're pretty easy animals to love. They're pretty easy to want to help, and so it wasn't a very big leap, but it's been a good way to spend a lifetime. I'll tell you that there.
Okay, so again, this is 99, and you fast forward to today. How many donkeys on average? I know it has to vary. How many donkeys do you now normally have at the facility?
Oh, about 35 to 45 in the winter, a few more in the summer.
And so when you with that, obviously you're trying to find homes for them and not keep them. I do want to get into the geriatric side of what you have there, but let's save that towards the end. So when you've got that, you've got a network now, I'm assuming after all this time, but how are you getting the word out for people that want to rescue a donkey now or whatever else? How does the whole thing work, I guess?
Oh, it's not too difficult because we've been here so long. They tend to find us.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. When in fact, because of that, because of how our population has changed, I don't have that many that are adoptable. But yes, but people find us, so that's nice.
So okay, so I guess we should go to the older ones. So has your population gone more to the older ones that don't are living out? What do they call it? They're putting them out to pasture now.
Yeah, they go out to pasture once in a while, but they like to stick around close to the barn where the food is more.
Food and warmth.
Yeah, more. So, because I've been placing donkeys in homes for 25 years, and because the average length of ownership is really only 7 to 9 years, you end up with an animal. If they live to be 30 years, they're going to have at least 3 homes during their lifetime.
The first one you rescue from.
First one you rescue from, and then three more after that to get up
Wow.
to age 30. And so what we have done over the years is we've allowed them to come back so that if the first home doesn't last, they don't fall back into the slaughterhouse pipeline.
So you have a return policy.
We have a return policy. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So now they're coming back to me. They're not 5 years old anymore. They're not 10 years old. They're not 15 years old. They're coming back over 20, which is really when being a senior geriatric begins. Some of them keep that health a little longer. Some of them start having some kind of senior issues, in their early 20s. The books all would say that the average age of a donkey before it dies is about 30 years. But I've kept 25 years of statistics of all the donkeys that have passed away at our facility and all of our adopted donkeys who have passed away. And sadly, the average age of death is under 21 years.
Do you think that's because they were rescued from a bad situation and they just had that shortened their lifespan? Or do you have an opinion? Is that your opinion?
I do think that things that happen, poor prenatal care, poor care when they're foals, poor environmental situations, start catching up with them when they reach that senior threshold. But I know someone else who has done a sister study, and their population that they used for their study was not primarily made up of just rescue animals. And unfortunately, their statistics were about the same age. So even, you're talking even animals who were bred by intentional.
Right. In a good environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder, because, there are some things, again, what you read on the internet, you can only believe about half of it anyways, but there's some that live like to be 40 years old and stuff like that too.
Oh,
I know the ones that are used in work, and I want to get into the rest of the world and what they're doing too, and then get back to what we're talking about. But, they say that. So do you think is there any theory other than the abuse that the ones you have, but the other one, do they have any theory? Is it just?
Oh, I think it's just like humans. It's 50% genetics and 50% environment.
Okay.
Some of them are just have better genetics, and you can do everything wrong and they still live. And some of them have the best possible breeding, and bad things happen. And you can and sadly. What I have found over the years is you can do every possible thing right and still have a donkey who drops dead in front of you from an aneurysm, or it just happens. You cannot put that on yourself to expect perfection. The donkey sanctuary in the UK, is the largest, and they've been around since 1979, and they've taken over 30,000 donkeys. And they consider their seniors to be starting at 20, but they have a few donkeys they can verify are over the age of 50. They have that kind of
Wow.
information. It's rare. It's about as likely as my living to be 100.
So do you think that I'm curious what their average age is. I wonder if it's different over in Europe than it is here in the US too. Maybe there's
Well, like I said, their literature is also categorizing the donkeys as seniors at 20. So I'm saying that's
pretty much the same.
pretty compatible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about donkey's personality, and I do wanna get into a little history of the donkey too, because I think it's fascinating. My mom, as I told you when we first met, is my mom has 4, and they're the friendliest things ever. They come up to you, and they wanna obviously, they're hoping you're gonna give them some food, but they'll let you pet them and do all kinds of things.
Well, we have to remember that we're dealing with an animal that was domesticated. Now it's looking like it's almost 7,000 years ago, and we took them off of the wild, and instead of killing them to eat it, we said, "Oh my gosh, this animal seems pretty docile. I wonder instead of eating it like a tiger or something, well, maybe we could use it for something." And so they brought it in, and they realized, "Oh my gosh, we can put things on its back, and it doesn't seem to mind." And we can walk it into town and carry our goods to barter with, and we can put our kids on top of it with our things that we're going to barter with. And then on the way to town, we can milk the Jenny, and we can feed that milk to our children so that we have more time to actually get into town and buy and sell goods. And their milk is really high in sugar and protein, so it's really good for kids that
Really?
have allergies to cow milk and stuff. And then, okay, so then I got the kids, we got our stuff, we'll come back. And when we get back to the house, then we can put the donkey in with our other livestock, our pigs and our goats and our chickens, and it will protect our other livestock from predators. What a great animal. That's like full circle. So that's how they became just the greatest beast of burden.
Well, I didn't realize, and I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't know that. I think the percentage I heard was like 12% of the donkeys, at least, are used as guard animals to protect the herds, and I had no idea.
And people say, oh, there's a myth, get a really young donkey and put it in with your whatever the livestock is, so it thinks it's the same species as the livestock. No, 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 no. That's not how it works. First of all, you never use a young donkey and never use a baby, because baby donkeys need to learn how to be a donkey from their mother. Their mothers are the best teachers. Their mothers are the ones that know how to chase off predators and how to be tough and strong and fight and everything. So you don't want to ask a baby to do that. The baby's just as vulnerable to predators as the livestock. Secondly, donkeys do not guard your livestock because they think they're a goat or a sheep. They guard your livestock because they guard their territory, and anything within their territory is entitled to that protection.
Yeah, there's so much. Every time I do an episode of something that I know a little bit about and learn a lot more about, they're really fascinating. Like back in the 7,000 years ago, the wealthy, like in Africa, if you have a bunch of cows, you're considered wealthy. So all the noble had donkeys because that was a sign of having wealth.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when they call, because the what equine assonance, which my name's really should be Marcus assonance, but what they also, I mean, there's so many things where the Bronze Age came about, that even though they had the rivers in Egypt and all that, the donkeys were carrying all the copper and stuff so they could make bronze, because they couldn't bring it inland without really being, unless they had a cart, and the donkeys did that, the beast of burden. But they're fascinating, and also the term ass as it was used was not considered a bad term. And then, I guess it was in England when it started becoming a derogatory name. And that's where they came from, because it really was always just what they were. They were an ass.
I mean, if you think about it in books, there is a reason. So the male that can is capable of reproducing has some of the highest testosterone levels in the animal kingdom.
Really?
And they have one job and one job only out in nature, and that is to reproduce. They don't help raise the babies. They don't stay with the herd to protect. They spend their life fighting other males, not usually to the death. That's not usually necessary. Usually it's they fight each other to the injury. And usually it's a knee injury that disables your opponent. But their job is to fight and get possession of a harem, breed, and then move on. So that you can understand that up until 50 years ago, we didn't have any safe pharmaceuticals or method by which we could neuter animals. And we didn't want to neuter animals because animals that reproduced were a benefit, because then you had things you could sell to make money with. So we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of watching these aggressive, dominant jacks only thinking of one thing, and it not surprising that we took that as maybe not a positive behavior.
What we saw, we didn't know the whole story. We just knew one of the stories.
But I mean, you can't. I mean,
And they became an ass.
So too much information. But there are ways of neutering other animals, equines, and bovine, without doing it surgically. But you cannot do that with a donkey. They bleed to death.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
They are far more vascular than a horse.
Oh, wow.
And if they are not neutered correctly with surgical procedure and sutures, they will bleed out in 24 hours and be gone.
Wow. I had no idea. I didn't see any of that when I was reading in there. You know what? Let's talk about, for people out there that may want to get a donkey.
Yeah.
Talk about the challenges. Obviously, we've been talking about the benefits because I think they're just these friendly, really kind of cool creatures. But can you talk about the challenges and what you would tell people that, by the way, I love your website because you have a lot of answers on there. We'll get to your address to your website when we're done too.
So I'm in Colorado, where we have pretty harsh winters. So our biggest challenge, of course, is having really suitable shelter. They need suitable shelter. These are desert animals. They do much better at 90 degrees dry than they do at 40 degrees and humid, and even poorer at 10 degrees and snowing.
Right.
So if you're going to have one of these animals in an area like Colorado, Montana, et cetera, you have to have a really secure barn for them. Their more suitable climate is obviously, Texas, Nevada, Arizona, Southern California, which is why the donkeys that came up to Colorado that were used in the mines,
mm-hmm.
when they weren't used anymore, they all migrated down to those areas of the southwestern United States. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge for the poor donkey is that it's designed to have to live in an environment where there's very little food, poor quality food, and very little of it. They're designed to have to walk, find a little bit to nibble on, walk some more, find just a little bit to nibble on. So in any part of the country where we have a wonderful spring and summer, where we have a few months of nice green grass growing up, that is actually absolutely contrary to what these animals should be having. It's sad, because you'd like them to be able to enjoy prosperity,
and cut your grass.
Absolutely. You'd like to have a place where you didn't have to buy hay and you could just let them free feed on pasture all the time. Unfortunately, their metabolism is such that they are not designed for high protein, high sugar that is in grass, and it causes, first of all, obesity, because they need so little to eat. They get very, very fat very, very quickly, and it's hard to get the weight off of them. And then, of course, obesity causes other problems. And then the second thing is it causes, what people commonly know as laminitis or founder in their hooves. And that can be both painful, debilitating, permanently disabling, and fatal.
Oh, so she just makes sure they don't eat very much, and just hay. Is that what they just eat?
Yeah, so we have to have a really tough love kind of attitude from about the middle of April to August. If you live in areas where there's really good forage,
Yeah.
they would like to go out in the pasture for 24/7. You'd like them to go out in pasture, but you'll kill them. You'll just kill them. It'll be a sad way for them to go. So just have to
You're right, sure.
their access to that. So there's that. Donkeys are much more particular about water. They are not dumb enough to drink brown or green water. So you have to have clean water. And if you don't have clean water, they won't drink. And if they don't drink, they'll colic.
Okay.
So clean water, a shelter, a low quality food they need, and then they need some regular hoof care.
Yeah, I saw that their hooves are softer than a horse's, that they're easier to work with, and they have to have a small. Do they? I think what I read that they don't necessarily have to have a horseshoe, or I guess
No.
donkey shoe.
No, they're actually, Mark, they're actually harder than a horse's hoof, which is why they don't need
Oh,
horseshoes. The only time you would put a shoe on a donkey would be if you're doing it for some corrective purpose, or maybe you're a runner or a hiker or a packer, and you're going to be going on such a long trip up in the mountains that you want to actually give the hoof some protection so that it doesn't wear down over 10, 15 miles. So the racers, the ones that do the pack burro racing in Colorado,
yeah.
they usually wear a removable shoe, little booties and stuff for the race, so that they actually don't wear the hoof wall down during the event.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So food, water, low quality water, hoof care every 10 to 12 weeks. And then I think the most critical thing that a donkey needs, which sometimes gets forgotten, is they need the companionship of their own species. They are herd animals like any other number of species, but within a herd, they have one particular buddy that they stay with for life. And that buddy they eat with, they sleep with, they play with, they engage in sexual behavior, and they protect each other. And so a donkey alone is a terrible idea. They were never, ever, ever designed to be alone.
What happens if one of them goes away for whatever reason?
Yeah.
What do they do? Do they find another friend, or are they just sad all the time?
What we have found is that if they're younger in age, they seem to have a much stronger capability of bonding again. We find that the elderly ones, after they've lost their love of their life, they live within the herd, they need the herd, they get security within the herd, and they get the social contact, but a lot of them never make that bond again.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, kind of an elderly.
That's really sad.
And they do mourn, but like I said, they seem, because they live in the moment, they seem to have a better capacity than we humans do
Right.
when we're grieving, to accept that it's happened and move on, because they know that if they grieve too deeply and stop eating, then they themselves will die. And they know that that's just not an option. So they pick up the pieces and go on to eating to save themselves.
So would you recommend to somebody that was getting a donkey that they should get two?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you know who's friends with who. You it's obvious.
Yeah.
Pairs are obvious, and it's not necessarily a sexual gender bond. It can
It's
be
just a pal.
it can be brothers, it can be sisters, it can be mother and son, it can be mother and daughter, it can be father and daughter. It just happens to be what their history has been. But it's obvious who are pairs, and the reason that we know that is because we'll bring pairs of donkeys into our shelter and put them in a group where they could change partners at any time, and they don't.
Oh, that's funny. Miniature pigs are like that. They're social. They want to have instead. A lot of people get one miniature pig. It's much better to have two because they're much happier when they have a friend.
And here's the other thing about donkeys is they are thinkers, and we know that they're good protectors, right? We know that
Right.
they're vigilant. We know they watch. If you only have one donkey, that donkey is going to be working 24/7. They're never going to have
Oh,
a
because
break.
they're a prey animal too. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
because they're a prey animal. And so if you get two, they can tag team. And what they will actually do is the one will stand while the other one sleeps, and then they'll switch places so that each of them gets some rest. And they are actually much more effective as guards that way. I have in any number of stories of them tag teaming together to either chase off or kill a predator.
Hey, I have a question for you. I've done a couple episodes on equine and equine therapy. Horses have energy that they can feel so far out from them. I forget how many meters it is, but they also can really feel an individual's energy if they're sad or whatever. Do donkeys have that same thing, or is that
Yes, uh, and I can tell you that they also pick up very, very well on people if they're nervous or afraid of them.
right?
If yeah, if they sense that you're afraid of them, then they start to get afraid.
Huh?
Because everything with a donkey, it's not the difference between a donkey and horse is the horse works on the pecking order hierarchy, and they put the humans at the top of the pecking order. A donkey works on a trust partnership.
Wow.
And so they will not follow your lead as a human unless they trust that you are making good judgments that are going to keep them safe.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I read about that. You always hear about they're being stubborn, but once they actually become attached and they know you and trust you, that they're like your best friend. They'll do whatever.
Anything.
Yeah,
And that's where that misconception that's just been centuries old that they are stubborn. They are not stubborn. What they are is they're thinkers. And so when you ask anything of them in their environment, their first reaction for those first few seconds after you ask the question, will you come over here? Is their brain is saying, I don't know. Should I? I mean, I don't know. Is that safe? Could I get injured? Could I die? I mean, is there fire over there? I don't know. Am I going to fall in a hole? Will she do something? I mean, and that appears to be a refusal. That's what it looks like because it's so much different than what a horse's reaction is. A horse will answer you immediately.
right.
Donkey's thinking it through. And so humans have perceived that he's just refusing. Nope. He's
No,
thinking it through.
they're just really, really smart and anxious at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. What else do we need to cover?
Oh, let's see.
Oh, I know. We were talking about veterinary care a little bit, and for you guys out there listening, across the board, I'm finding, and I want you to get into that, but because of what I do, and I'm talking to veterinarians all the time, ever since COVID in particular, all veterinarians right now are overworked and understaffed just for whatever reason, and on your equine world, because it's not as big, it's probably a little bit harder to find a vet, but once you have one, you're good to go. So,
Oh, yeah.
want to talk a little bit about that?
It's a lot of the vets retired during COVID. And so then there was this huge gap, and it had to be filled with veterinarians who had many fewer years of experience. And then within that experience, at least in what I have to do, there isn't a lot of interaction with donkeys. And so the veterinarians are left with trying to say, well, I don't know, it's an equine. It's probably just like a horse. And it really isn't. You cannot do the things. There's some very huge differences. There's differences in how they metabolize drugs and anesthesia. And so you have to be aware of those differences. And so even before COVID, there was great difficulty finding veterinarians who were experienced with donkeys. And now that problem is even greater. And we know that there's a national veterinary shortage among all for the care of all pets, but it's even worse among large animals and livestock. Because most of the time you have to go out to where the animal is. Most of the time the owners either cannot or will not bring them to your clinic for care. So that means having to go out in cold weather in the winter, having to go out at night in the dark. And so that's, far less comfortable kind of a practice. So we are seeing across the country a real crisis with people who want to have their animals healthy, who want to get the medical care, and they just can't access it. It doesn't matter. Yes, the costs have gone up, and that's been a deterrent for people. But even if cost isn't a challenge for you, still getting access to qualified care to get your donkey out of a crisis is very difficult right now.
Yeah, but just to reemphasize, it's not saying don't get a donkey, just do the research.
Yeah. I mean, you have to look at these things. They're once you get them, you'll just be so happy you got, because they're just fun to have around.
Oh, I love my mom's donkey.
They're always doing something funny or cute or playing with each other, beating each other with, our donkeys like to play with hula hoops and put them on each other, and they like to beat each other with balls, and it's just they're always doing
That's
something.
so cute. So for everybody that's listening, how can you give them your information, how to get a hold of you? If they want to either rescue one or they've got questions or whatever, let's talk about how to find you on your website, social media, whatever you got.
So we have a website. It's just longhopes.org. Easy.
It's in the description too, for everybody that's listening too.
Cool. And we have a Facebook and an Instagram page too. And we also, we try to share as much as we can, what we know and what we've learned over 25 years. So, we're available as a resource for people if they have questions and just can't find a good answer for either a behavioral problem or a medical issue that they're dealing with.
Well, you also on your website, there's a section that calls about donkeys, and there's each one, there's a little blurbs on, is the donkey good for you and all this. There's a bunch of other FAQs on there. They're really, really helpful on your website. I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got where for everybody that's listening is your favorite time, the silly joke time.
Okay.
Here we go. Now, before I do it, like I tell every time, if you've got a better joke, and I guarantee when you hear this joke, you're going to know it's a better joke, please send me an email at mkyleforrealpodcast.com, and I'll have your grandkids on, you on, your kids, nieces, nephews, anybody but me, please. Also, if you've got ideas like this episode today or whatever, please reach out to me. I get people calling all the time or send me emails and I get back to everybody. I really do. So here I have two. And if this one's so bad, you need another one.
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay. So here, the first one is, what do you call a donkey with 3 legs?
No. Mm-mm.
A wonky.
All right.
Okay. Here's a second one, because I might as well have to do it anyway since I've got it. What is the hardest key to turn? You know this answer.
Donkey.
Yeah, donkey. Exactly.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true. Actually getting a donkey to back up might be the hardest thing.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to have something relative to it and all that. And now you know why you should have told one instead of me. But anyways, first off, Kathy, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I guarantee we could have talked for another 2 hours, had all kinds of other things we could have gone into, but maybe we'll do another one and follow up. But I know you're busy. I know you're doing great things. Just talking about the donkeys with the hula hoops and the balls, and that makes me want to just see them and hang out with them. It really sounds so cool. I really, really appreciate being on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
Okay, and then for everybody else out there that's listening, please keep following, listening, pass the word. Obviously, more people listen, the more opportunities I get on my end. But most importantly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. For real.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Mark Kyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.